The Obstinate King, a Xevenithen-Sauxieni fairy tale. There was once a kingdom under the sun. In this kingdom were many festivities for the people in the day, and they would merrily dance and sing and feast and drink under the sun for many hours. But the day never did stay, for it went with the sun, and with the sun went the people, for it warned them of twilight, and with the twilight came the Fae. The Fae would merrily dance and sing and feast and drink under the waning sun. The people of the sun knew this, for they could hear the spirits merrymaking within the shelter of their homes. The people were always frightened in the twilight hours, never daring to peek out their shutters where glimpses of shadows danced. Their fright was well founded, for it was known that any poor fool who wandered from his shelter or peeked out his window would join the Fae forever, and would not be found by the first light of dawn. Many people of the kingdom had lost brothers, sisters, fathers, and mothers to the Fae, but they had long learned to accept their powerlessness to these spirits. However, one day the king had become exasperated by the malevolent spirits, for too many of his subjects had been lost to their trickery. He decided to test the true might of the Fae, and called upon his commander. "Round 20 of your bravest men," said he to his commander, "and let them await the twilight to face these most dastardly demons. Let these spirits taste our blades. We shall see if they shall continue their merrymaking then." "But sire," the commander protested, "my men cannot face such an enemy. Surely our blades and our magic could not injure this untouchable foe, and there is not a man in my ranks who would possess the courage to purposely await the twilight, my king." "Ha! The cowardice of the man who leads my men!" exclaimed the king. "I should only hope my men are not as spineless as their commander." At the king's command, the commander was powerless to refuse. He rounded 20 of his bravest men who would await the twilight. He gave them sunstones for protection, paid them each in 25 ruby scales, and then armed them with swords and bows and axes and shields. And so when the sun began to wane, and the people were fleeing to the safety of their homes, those 20 men stood firmly by the castle gates and watched the sun set. But they would not see the sun rise, for by then no one could find where the 20 men had gone. Some claimed to have heard screams in the twilight hours. Others claimed to have heard new voices join in the eldritch laughter. Still, it was agreed by all that those 20 men were now with the Fae. The king, however, remained petulant. He called again upon his commander. "Round 50 of your bravest men," said he to his commander, "and let them await the twilight to face these most dastardly demons. 20 men, I see now, were not enough." "But sire," the commander protested, 20 men have already perished. Now surely none of my men would wish to share the fate of their comrades. Why not let it rest, my king?" "Fie!" shouted the king. "Double the pay, double the magic, double the weapons. Let these 50 be mages in all the elements. These demons shall be smitten with flame and rain and lightning and wind." The commander was again powerless to refuse. He rounded 50 men with powers over every element. He gave them sunstones as with the last regiment, but also had them go to Halkor's temple, so that the sun god might hear their prayers for protection. He doubled everything as the king had wished. "Halkor's blessing with ye be," the commander told them as they stood by the gates and the sun's descent was imminent. He was aggrieved, for he felt responsible for the fates of these men. So heavy was his heart that he held out a coil of golden rope and said to the 50, "I shall tie this rope to the gate and bring the other end within the castle doors. The priests have blessed it so that if you must retreat, touch it with your magic and the rope shall glow. So long as you touch it, it shall continue its glow, and the servants on the other side of the door shall see it and bring you inside." With these words he left them. And so when the sun began to wane, and the people were fleeing to the safety of their homes, those 50 men stood firmly by the castle gates and watched the sun set. But they would not see the sun rise, for by then no one could find where the 50 men had gone. Some claimed to have seen the rope jerk frantically before eerily ceasing its motions. Others claimed the rope never once moved. Still, it was agreed by all that those 50 men were now with the Fae. The king, however, had become very angry. He summoned his commander once again. "Round 100 of your bravest men," he growled from his throne, "and let them await the twilight to face these most dastardly demons. An army, I see now, is what shall crush their insolence." "But sire," the commander protested, 70 men now have already perished. It is clear that the sun god himself does not hold power in the twilight. How then can we be any less powerless? Can you not see the men are shaken?" "They will have no cause to fear when their commander is with them," the king replied. The commander blanched. "Sire, I beg you reconsider. I have served you faithfully. Why now would you compel me to my execution?" The king jumped from his throne in rage, his suddenness seizing the commander with great fear. "I should execute you now. Would that you were not already a cowardly corpse," he shouted. "Keep your faint heart here if you must. I will destroy these demons myself. My blade yearns to slit their laughing tongues." The commander beseeched he not go, but he was powerless at the king's refusal. The king rounded 100 of what brave men remained in his ranks. Though many were faint of heart, those 100 were lured by the king's promise of wealth and vengeance for their slaughtered comrades. They were mages in all the elements, well armed and well geared. Among their numbers were also 20 warrior priests of Halcor, armed with shields of Halcor's light to banish the darkness of twilight. They themselves gave Halcor's blessings and provided the men with the most powerful of sunstones. And so when the sun began to wane and the people were fleeing to the safety of their homes, those 80 men, the 20 priests, and the one obstinate king stood firmly by the castle gates and watched the sun set. But they would not see the sun rise, for by then no one could find where the 80 men, the 20 priests, and the one obstinate king had gone. Some claimed that the king fought valiantly when twilight came. Others claimed he was seized by a terrible dread and realized his folly when the last light fell. Still, it was agreed by all that the king was now with the Fae.